Hello, everyone. Oh, wow, we've already got around 15 people join us. That's incredible. So we'll just wait until a few of the numbers, for the numbers to go up a little bit. So I'll just give it another minute or so before we kick off. Okay, awesome. Just double checking from my side that everything is up and running. Yep. Great. Oh, we've already got a hi from someone. That's great. Nice to see people engaging. All right. I think, yeah, I just wanted to say hi as well. Hi. Nice to see you. Okay. So let's kick off. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. Welcome to our Code First Girls MOOC this evening. It's great to see so many of you joining. Clearly, you're all very excited about cloud technologies, which is great to see. So backstage, you have me. I'm Pauline from Code First Girls. I'm a Code First Girls brand ambassador. So if you have any questions about Code First Girls or other upcoming classes and events, just please put them on the YouTube chat and I'll try my best to reply during our session today. And just a bit about myself. I currently work in the tech industry. I've worked in tech for the last 3 years now as a site reliability engineer and a DevOps engineer in 2 different organizations. And currently I'm working at a company called Gitpod as a community engineer. And on the side, I love building and being part of technical communities. And I've worked with Code First Girls over the past 5 years now. And they've absolutely changed my life. So I'm really just thrilled to see so many of you joining us today and, wanting to learn from Code First Girls and our wonderful guests today. And I almost guarantee that you'll learn a lot and change your own lives as you move towards a career in tech. So just as just for information, Code First Girls are running some other MOOCs like this one. So feel free to sign up for future MOOCs. I'll send a link onto the chat where you can find all of the sessions. And these sessions are designed to give you a great insight on a specific technology or specific concept. And just to let you know, this video will be up for a week or 2 after the session today. So if you do want to rewatch any of the content, then you can do so by just revisiting the same YouTube link. Okay, so now onto the session. CFG is just absolutely delighted to partner with Deloitte today to learn about cloud technologies. And it's actually really fitting for me just because I love everything cloud related. I specifically worked on AWS for the first 2 years of my tech journey. So this is very exciting for me as well to listen into. And today we have Richard, who's a technical lead in cloud engineering at Deloitte, and he'll be talking through the session today. And I think we also have a few other folks from Deloitte who will be talking about what it's like to work at Deloitte at the end of the session. So yeah, I'll bring them on after we've done our little session with Richard. So without further ado, I'll invite Richard onto the stream. And hi, Richard, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for that introduction.
No worries. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited for this one. And I think based on the numbers as well, there's quite a few people who are very interested in cloud and it's really taken off. So really excited for this session.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, shall I get started?
Yes.
You've introduced me already. So I'm Richard. I'm a technical lead with Deloitte and going to talk about cloud. Now I am going to share my screen just to get the slides started.
Yes, absolutely. So
And
I'm
now
gonna jump off here, but yeah, feel free to ask any questions or anything. Over to you, Richard.
Okay, cool. Right. So can someone confirm? Okay, cool. Yeah, I can now see that you're seeing my slides there. So if I move on to the next slide. So if I'm looking over to the side, sorry, it's just because I'm going to be reading my own slides as I talk through them. So yes, this is the plan. We're going to really cover the basics of the cloud here. There are lots of cloud tutorials. I've done a few of them myself. So I've positioned this as kind of like a general introduction that could help you understand, get a bit of context about using the cloud, potentially before going through those tutorials or at any point really. So we'll do about 10 minutes on what, where, who, and why. We'll do some scenarios which will show the various types of uses that you can use the cloud for. There will be a demo. Hopefully it will be a real live demo. I did it at lunchtime today to make sure everything was still working, so I assume that will all still work. And also, yeah, we'll have, if there's time, I'll go over some cloud FAQs that, you know, clients often ask me when they're thinking about migrating their software to the cloud. And then we'll also have questions from you. So yeah, let's get started. Oh. Okay, so this is a picture of a cloud, not the cloud. The cloud is often represented as a cloud, and I'm not sure how helpful that really is. So I'm going to give my own definition, which is as simple as possible version of what the cloud is. So the cloud is computers and storage devices, which are on the internet. They have access to the internet. They're in huge, secure data centers. They're running all kinds of software. So there's the out-of-the-box software, which is provided within the cloud or by the cloud vendors themselves, but there's also your own organization software which you can run on the cloud. So companies pay to use all of this hardware to host their internal systems or their client-facing systems or both. That's it. And by the way, I meant to say as I go, if you have any questions, please do feel free to type them on the chat. I'll try to keep an eye and I'll respond to questions as they come. But hopefully, yeah, this gives a clear and simple introduction of what the cloud is. It's computers in data centers on the internet, which are available to be used by client organizations. Okay, and I've said that's it, kind of. There's a kind of, because there are lots of smaller variants around this basic definition, but this should kind of cover it in most cases. So what does this actually look like? So here's a typical data center. These data centers are essentially full of computer hardware. This is the computers, the storage, the network infrastructure, and they are connected to the internet and located all around the world. So that really is what the cloud is. It's this combination of hardware and software that's hosted in these data centers all around the world, made available to clients to use for their own purposes. Okay, so now we have a picture of what the cloud is. Let's talk about who are the main vendors. So there are, let's say, a handful, or well, there's clearly two huge players, but there's a handful of vendors that really make up most of the well-known cloud vendors. There are others, but yeah, they're much smaller than these top few. So AWS, Azure, which is Microsoft's offering, Google Cloud, Alibaba, which is large in China and East Asian markets. So I assume most of us have heard of these vendors. Now, cloud services. So this slide really introduces mainly the software that's running on this hardware that really, you know, makes up the cloud. And no individual can be a master of all of these services. There are so many, and it's growing by day. You could never keep up with it all. But if I just briefly talk about this slide, the bottom there, the infrastructure services, they're like the foundation of the cloud. So you've got compute, storage, networking. It really is the lower level services, and this is where the cloud started. Making virtual machines, hard drive space, network infrastructure, making that available to clients. But it was a natural progression for cloud vendors to then build software services on top of this infrastructure and to make that available to their clients. I've got some notes on if I pick a few out here. So media and CDN, that might be something like video hosting, or even hosting services like the one we're using right now, YouTube, or video conferencing services. So that's an example of a service which sits on top. Data here, you've got SQL databases. So an organization may just want a database. They could choose to pay for some compute infrastructure and install their own database software onto that virtual machine, just as if they'd bought a computer and put it in their office. But otherwise, they could pay for a database service provided by a cloud vendor. And in that scenario, they're not going to have to worry about the hardware or the operating system that the database is running on, because the cloud vendor will look after that for them and just provide them with this database service. And a more advanced one could be, for example, cognitive services in this intelligence box here. So maybe you want to create a system which analyzes uploaded documents to make sure that if a user tells you they're giving you a map, or a map of a location, then it would analyze that document to verify, oh yes, this is a map or this isn't a map. Yeah, that's another example of these kind of cloud services that you can utilize. But like I said, no one individual knows all of the services. It's impossible to there are so many. Okay, so we have a bit of an understanding of what the cloud is, and from a hardware and software perspective. So I'm going to cover, why would organizations move to the cloud? What are the advantages? There are 6 sections here. So reduced infrastructure cost. It's a key one. I'm going to try and not to say about all of them this is a key one, but that may happen. So reduced infrastructure costs. So organization no longer has to pay for the hardware, the staff, the actual office space, and the secure access systems to that office space. If they're now going to host their applications on the cloud, all of that is covered by the cloud vendor themselves. Capacity and scalability, it's a significant one, especially with things like that. I mean, the classic example is like a Black Friday, where organizations might see like a 10-fold increase in customers trying to use their system on like a weekend or a busy period of the year. If you wanted to be able to handle that volume just for that busy period, say it's 1 week throughout the year, if you were hosting that yourself, the only way to do that would be to have the capacity required to cover the really high busy period. The rest of the year, that hardware would sit there underutilized. Well, with the cloud, you can avoid that, because the cloud vendors allow you to scale up the capacity that you're paying for that week and then scale back down. So it's a huge, it's key. Like I said, I'm going to probably say that about all of these. refresh aging infrastructure. So it's just, as we know, technology, hardware and software, it goes out of date quickly. It really, if you want to stay up to date, then it takes a frequent updating of your hardware and your software. If you have the hardware yourself, you're responsible for that, and it's going to be costly to keep all of that up to date. If you use a cloud vendor, then the cloud vendor is doing that for you. So support new business opportunities. So this ties in to some of the services I looked at in the previous slide. You may want to have systems where it's like complicated services, like say the cognitive services that we looked at with image analysis, to actually get that running locally on some hardware that you're running would be potentially very expensive to buy that software, and it would be prohibitive to, you can't just casually try these things out. But with cloud vendors, like I said, thousands of these services are available, and they can be trialed often at low cost. So you can try a image recognition services, try it for a week, develop a prototype solution with it, and if you think it's working for you, you can implement it in your system. So it really allows your business to explore new areas and take advantage of new opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do because your own hardware and software maybe can't provide that functionality. Business continuity, this one really refers to backing up your system and reducing your downtime. If you have your own data center, well, what happens if there's a huge fire and the data center goes down? Well, ideally, you will have a second data center in a different location ready to go that you can just turn on as soon as you require it, as soon as the fire hits. Imagine doing that on your own. It would be very costly. In the cloud is kind of already built like that. That infrastructure is already there. Often it's just like you tick a box or you configure a setting and you say, yes, please back up my system to a remote location, back it up every 24 hours. And you have much improved business continuity in that scenario. And finally, increase collaboration. As you move to the cloud, your systems are then available online on the internet or through remote VPN connections, things like that. You could do this locally on your own data center, but the cloud is built this way. So for example, with coronavirus, a lot of organizations suddenly had to move to working from home, and that actually coincided or led to a huge increase in usage of the cloud, because suddenly these companies who may only have supported workers in their local office had to be able to support working from home workers. So the cloud helps with that. And also it makes it easier to collaborate with those outside of your organization, because you can more easily grant access to external users or contractors to your systems. So that covers the main advantages of using the cloud, and really it's a very compelling argument, and this is why it's so common now to be moving towards the cloud. I think if your organization doesn't embrace the cloud, you're at serious risk of really falling behind the competition. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about 3 real-world scenarios just to give an example, just to provide some context to why, provide context to actual, real-world scenarios of using the cloud. Okay, so scenario 1 is that organizations are leveraging the cloud more and more to reduce the amount of hardware and software they need to maintain. So it ties into what I've introduced already. There's a kind of a simple route and a more complicated route. The simple route is a good example of the simple route is software as a service. So things like Google Workspace or Microsoft Office Online, Office 365, they're tools that previously you might, like Microsoft Office, you might need to have that installed on your local system. And if it goes out of date, if there's a new update available, you would have to roll that update out onto all of the user systems. Whereas if you're using software as a service, it's all made available largely through a web browser. And you no longer need to update the system or maintain that software. If you suddenly hire 10 more workers, you don't necessarily need to pay for 10 more year-long licenses. Maybe you're going to have those workers for a short period of time. You can just add those users and pay for them as and when they're using the system. SAP is another example of software that has existed for many years. Used to be an on-premises solution, so you would buy the software, you would have to install it on servers running on your infrastructure within your organization. Well, there's no need to do that anymore. You can use the cloud native SAP and again, just treat it as software as a service. And then for developers, there are things like Visual Studio Code Spaces, similar idea. The development environment, the source code, the test environment, everything is there, and it can be made actually available through the browser, so you could develop entirely as a kind of a software as a service through the browser model. A more tricky, I'm not going to go through each step here, but a more tricky but related part of this is if you want to migrate your internal systems, but maybe there isn't a software as a service version available. You might have some legacy data processing systems, and your hardware is going out of date, and you think, okay, I want to re-platform this onto the cloud. That is totally feasible, and it's common. Organizations do that, but to do that, it's quite a complicated process. Especially the older the application is, you would have to go through this analysis, saying, right, take software X, what can we do with this? Can we migrate it? Or can we just lift and shift, it's called, where instead of running it on local servers, we'll run it on virtual machines in the cloud. Others, you might need to do some software changes before it can work. So it fits into the same scenario of leveraging the cloud to run your business software, but where there isn't a software as a service version available, it's more complicated. So that's scenario one. Scenario two is, let's say a organization has a software tool that is like Facebook, maybe it's their product. So yeah, Facebook, for example, and they want to host that on the cloud. It's a completely different use case of using the cloud, but absolutely you're still using the cloud. So in this scenario, you would build that application targeted at the cloud from scratch, and that's referred to as cloud native development. So what qualifies as cloud native development? Well, here these points: runs on the cloud from day one. Your team is trained on cloud services. It's built to leverage these services. This is it. And if I move on to the next slide, which shows the architecture of such a solution, again, we can see here that architecturally the design of this solution is made to leverage these cloud services. So it's straight from day one. We don't need to understand the detail of all of these things, but a developer on the team or any individual on the team can see, okay, I'm building this application and I'm basing it on these cloud services. So it's very different from an organization running its internal systems in the cloud, but absolutely it's a cloud scenario. And then finally, scenario 3, I have a couple within scenario 3, but the point here, the big difference here is many modern applications could not really exist without cloud computing. So scenario 1 and 2 is about running applications in the cloud instead of in, let's say, local data centers. Scenario 3 is saying, well, now the cloud is so powerful and has so many services that there are applications that you just couldn't have without having the cloud. The example I've got here is global coronavirus statistics. So if you have this global data with huge data sets and you want to analyze that, you want to capture that data all over the world, so maybe they're in different formats because different countries may store it in different formats. You may want to bring in all kinds of sources of information, like let's say the patterns of traffic during lockdown and things like that. So you could bring that kind of analysis all into one system, and then maybe you'd want to present that on a website, or some science departments might want to do the analysis on the data. I mean, when a solution grows to that scale and that level of complexity, it's not really feasible to do it without the cloud. And same in this example, Amazon Alexa, I'm using as the example here. You could potentially, with Amazon Alexa, you issue that a command, obviously a voice command, and that may need to go off to the internet to find some information for you and relay that back to you. It may be just playing a song. It may just be turning on a light, which is in the very same room. So that complexity of that, or the diversity of what that's doing there, it really wouldn't be feasible without the cloud. So yeah, so the point is that really the cloud, it's a huge and powerful, and it can pretty much be anything you want it to be. Those 3 scenarios are very different, but it's all what the cloud does. Okay, so I'm going to go over a demo. Before I run the demo, I'm going to just move to the next slide. What we're going to see in the demo is I'm going to deploy an application similar to scenario 2, so it's a web application, and I'm going to deploy it from scratch. So I need both hardware and software. If I want to have a website that runs on the internet, well, there needs to be some computer that's running that website for me. So traditionally, without the cloud, I would need a computer, then I would need to have a web server running on that computer, then I would need to install my application on that web server. Automating the cloud, or IAC, infrastructure as code, can do all of that for you by having it written out in these languages, the templates and the scripts here. So the templates and scripts, not only do they say, oh, please deploy this website, they, as you can see in the bottom part of the diagram, they can actually specify, look, I need a network that looks like this, I need some storage that looks like this, I need some, hardware that looks like this. So what I'll demo involves some of this infrastructure as code and also a web application like scenario 2. Let me just flip to that. Let me try. Okay. Oh, is that a bit small? Let me try. Okay, so this is my own personal Microsoft Azure cloud account, and I'm going to do refresh just to kind of prove. I want to show here, we don't need to understand everything that we're looking at here, but the key takeaway so far is that I have 3 resource groups. A resource group is just a grouping for developers or anybody to understand, okay, I've grouped this number of cloud services all together as one resource group. That's all it is. And at the moment, I have 3. What I have here is a code repository, which is just a public one. Anyone can access it. This is not something I created. It's a code repository which includes some infrastructure as code and allows me to deploy a solution to Azure. If I look at the infrastructure as code, it's in this deploy folder and it's a JSON file. You know, not nice to read as a human, but I can see that it's telling me, oh, deploy some services like the communication services, the websites. So this is the hardware that it's telling it's going to set up when I run this infrastructure as code file. So if I go back to that, I'm going to click deploy to Azure. This should bring me into my Azure Portal. And this web interface that I'm using here, which is the Azure Portal, it's perfect for running a demo or prototyping things, but it might not work for hugely automated scalable solutions. So there are alternatives to using a manual interface, but yeah, obviously the manual interface is suitable for me in this scenario. So there are some variables I have to fill in order to deploy this template. So the template is called Group Chat Hero. So I'm going to call my resource group Group Chat Hero. Oh, caps lock is on, but shouldn't that? Oh. Group Chat Hero. I'm going to deploy it to the UK. And app name, let me see, Code First Girls, Group Chat Hero 123. I'm giving it an obscure app name just so that it doesn't clash with any other names that are out there. So now I click Review and Create. Oh, did I miss something? Oh, what happened with my... Sorry, do I need to click Create? Oops. Okay, create a new resource group. Let's try that again. Okay, it did some validation. So I can now click deploy and this deployment is in progress. So this is creating the hardware resources that I need on the cloud, and also it will also deploy the software application itself. Whilst that's running, I can quickly show if I wanted to do this process manually, or even if I wanted to just see what resources are available in the cloud. Well, I went to the home, I did create a resource. You know, some of the complicated ones might be machine learning, and let's say I don't know too much about machine learning. Well, you can learn more. Oh, is my right click not working? Let's try. Oh, I'm running a bit slow, but documentation link. Okay, that's opening in a different tab. So if I wasn't too clear about a resource, yeah, I can click into the documentation, learn about it. There's tutorials here, so you can really learn anything you want. And then, you know, a week later, I could be a machine learning master. Something simpler, maybe if I just wanted a server, like earlier I mentioned, I might want to run my own database. So I don't necessarily want to use a cloud database service. I want to use my own custom one. So maybe first I just need a server. So I click that, and here I get some of the same settings, like which resource group. And I can also choose the size here. So if I go to see all sizes, here I'm choosing like a higher spec machine or a lower spec machine. With scaling, I could change this after deploying it. I could have it, you know, increase its spec for a day or something like that. But we can also see here there's a cost per month, and that changes. This cost per month is an estimate based on the machine being in use or available for use 24/7. I could have scripts which turn the machine off, turn the virtual machine off when it's not in use, and that would reduce my monthly cost. Okay, let's see how my template is going. Okay, this is good. So my deployment is complete. So I can now go to this resource group. In fact, if I go back here and I go to all my resource groups, well, previously I had 3. We can now see that I've got 4. So let me look at this group chat hero resource group. And within this list here is showing me the resources and services that I'm using. So I've got an app service, which I know is something that's used to run web applications, and I've got this communication service. With each service, again, I could flick into the documentation and learn more about it. This is a service used for enabling real-time communication on the internet. If I then actually go into the app service, just move this tab over. So the app service is the one that's going to run my website. And here I have a URL. So hopefully if I go to that URL, just let that load. Okay, so this is it. This is from the source code. Here it is, exception. So this example online, I showed it in Git. This is another, this is another link to it. But what I had in that code repository was infrastructure as code as well as the application itself. So this is the application. If I start chat, I mean, at the moment I've got no one to chat to. I could potentially share a comment in the link, share a link in the comments section. Oh, I've put my name as hi. Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Rich. This is the link here which allows people to join that chat. Oh, we've got some questions here. Okay.
Yeah, we do have some questions, Richard, but I think it's around careers. Maybe we can jump into that later whilst you continue.
Okay, we can do that later. Yeah. Can we share a link just so that, or even just with you, Pauline, can you?
Sure, I can
I've
share
just
that.
sent you a link. You can either share it or you can just click it and join in.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay. Oh, I'm part of the demo. How exciting.
Yeah, so now you're roped into being part of the demo. So if you click that link and kind of give yourself a name.
Awesome.
Oh, we've got Hannah as well. So now we can all hopefully chat in here.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, so that's kind of, this is real. So that proves it's real-ish. So stay connected. I'm going to go to my Azure resource and I'm going to click stop on this. Are you sure you want to stop? Yes, I am. So now you guys, if you click reload, or especially if you click shift and reload on your browser,
Yeah.
I'm
So I get
going to do it.
error 403. This web,
Yeah,
yeah, web app is stopped.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and I can click restart. Now I think our specific unique link may actually get recreated here, but I don't know if we're still in the group. But anyway, that's shown. Yeah, thread ID is not valid because I stopped and started that machine. Whereas if I go to the regular link, here we go, we're back up and running. So yeah, that quick demo has just shown, if I go back to the resource group, shown how easy it is really to deploy not only the actual software application itself, which was the JavaScript chat sample we just looked at, but also the actual hardware required to run that. If you're a developer, that's a very powerful thing, because maybe I want to test an alternative function and I don't want to ruin this deployment. I can actually give it my own resource group name and do my own deployment of the solution and test it that way. If this was the live production service, we could set metrics. Actually, if we go to the overview page of the app service, we can see some usage metrics here. They're very low because we just created it, but I could set rules to auto scale this up if suddenly my chat application becomes very popular. If I wanted to add features myself, well, in that Git repository, I've got the code, so I could add features. So yeah, I mean, hopefully that's shown kind of the power of the internet there, or the power of the cloud, sorry. Okay, I'm going to flick back to this. Yeah, so I think we're good for time. So I can go over these FAQ slides, which is questions that I'm often asked working in this cloud industry. And after that, I can open it up to the questions which are noted there. Okay, so one common question from a client that's thinking about moving to the cloud is my data safe in the cloud? The answer is actually not automatically. There's this shared responsibility model, which essentially identifies where the responsibility lies. If we look at software as a service, so for example, Gmail or Office 365, actually the cloud provider is taking responsibility for the vast majority of what goes into running this service. However, the organization is still responsible for some component, the data and the access. If we're using Office 365 and suddenly someone grants public access to my documents by hacking into the system, or if they were already in the system and they just, a bad actor within the organization, you could say, then yeah, the data is no longer safe because of that human's behavior. So as you move to the lower level services, more and more of the system becomes the responsibility of the individuals that have created the solution. So so the question, is my data safe? Well, not always. The systems you build on top of the cloud have to be safe too, and then your data is safe. Okay, how can we follow cloud best practices? The cloud is huge, and it's hard to know. It's hard to, how do you choose which is the right service and things like that? Well, there are best practices, and they're often referred to as well-architected frameworks. It's a commonly accepted standard, really, but different providers have their own documentation, which essentially say the same thing or cover the same area. So this is an example of the AWS well-architected framework. And yeah, the way they phrase it, I like how they phrase it. So it's a set of questions you can use to evaluate how well an architecture is aligned to AWS best practices or cloud best practices. Have you covered security off, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization? We can see here, but it's, yeah, if you follow a framework, it's a good way to independently assess if your cloud-based application is following best practices. Will the cloud save me money? Right, so the answer here is yes and no. It absolutely can save you money, but there's a more recent trend in that the cloud, it's so powerful and so flexible that you get some other areas like, as I explained earlier, a developer can just spin up his or her own version of a solution, and maybe those services then need to be paid for. So the cloud can save you money, but you have to keep a close eye on your costs to make sure it doesn't go out of control and you don't end up wasting money. There are lots of tools in the cloud, like pricing calculators and tools for just managing your bill or predicting your cost to help with that. Can we move to the cloud in phases? Well, absolutely yes. And it's an area I didn't touch on. I suppose one of the first slides where I define what the cloud is, and then I said kind of, because yeah, there's all these other, there's hybrid, there's public private cloud. There are lots of ways to utilize the cloud. It can be a full-scale migration, or it can be, well, any of these strategies here. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but absolutely you can move to the cloud in a phased approach. So you can dip your toes in the water, give it a try, and just have a look at what applications you have, and you can leverage the cloud where it makes sense and potentially keep things running on premises if it doesn't necessarily make sense. Okay, yeah, clients might ask, right, so my system needs to be compliant with any given standard. Will it be? Yeah, it's similar to the shared responsibility model. Cloud vendors themselves put a lot of effort into ensuring that they achieve all these certifications across all different areas, for governance and compliance purposes. So absolutely, the cloud vendors pretty much do tick off every compliance requirement there is, and then as long as the solution that you build on top of it also complies, then absolutely yes, the solution can be compliant. Other organizations may ask, can I control where my data is stored? They may not want data to go offshore, things like that, and yeah, that can be done in the cloud. Okay, yeah, so that brings us to a close. There's no conclusion slide. There was a lot to cover there, but I hope that's given a kind of a general overview of the cloud and acts as a good starting point if you do then want to learn more about the cloud, it hopefully provides a bit of context.
That was very, very good, Richard. Thank you so much for that. I've been in cloud for the past like 2 years, and it's been everything you were saying. I was nodding along, like, yes,
yeah.
Absolutely, this is absolutely spot on. So we do have a few questions. I don't know if if the rest of the Deloitte team want to be live on the show as well. I might start adding people. I can see Joe, Hannah, Anne backstage, so I might start throw him on if that's okay. All good. Cool. Hi,
Yep.
Joe.
Hi, how are we doing?
Nice to see you. And I'm just seeing Hannah's put her camera on. Hi, Hannah. And if you want to jump in as well, then let me know, and I'll add you onto the screen. But
shall I stop sharing, or there you
yes,
go.
I'll
You've done
remove.
it.
Yes, yeah. That's perfect. Okay, awesome. So the first question that we've had is actually around careers. So I'll just pop it up on the screen here. So if a newcomer wants to start a career in the cloud and is looking for a career opportunity, what certification or job roles would you suggest is a must and a could have? Is it essential to know how to code? I replied with my own little personal experience there, but I'd love to open up the floor to everyone else.
Okay, I'll try. So I didn't see your response, so I'll do it in reverse order. Is it essential to know how to code? Absolutely not, because there are so many roles in the cloud. It's far more than just coders. And the certifications, there are like basic entry-level certifications. I think it's AWS Fundamentals or Azure, AZ 900, I think it's known as. I really rate them, and actually I don't apply them just to newcomers. I think anyone who works in the cloud can really benefit from doing those entry-level certifications, because it really does provide a broad overview. So I think that they're a good place to start, the entry-level certifications from AWS or Azure. They're Google too, they have an equivalent. That would be my answer.
Amazing. Hannah, Joe, do you want to add anything to that?
I suppose the only thing I'd add from maybe like a Deloitte context is that to choose a career path in cloud with Deloitte, for example, you wouldn't need those qualifications prior to applying. We have a huge library of and a huge access to training across all those sort of technologies. So it would be perfectly sensible for you to kind of apply or come through as a new joiner at Deloitte, and then we would help, in fact, pay for that kind of certification, I would say, and we do offer all of them, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
That's awesome. Anything from you, Hannah?
Just that if you are doing one of those certifications, or even not sitting certification, there's lots of materials on the actual cloud provider websites. So if you went onto AWS or any of the others, there's a wealth of material, like actual videos and I guess easily digestible documentation. Or to start with, obviously there's lots of very detailed documentation too, but to start with, there's lots of good stuff. So I would, head there.
Yeah. I also recommend A Cloud Guru. They were quite pivotal in the first few months of my initial learning of the cloud. And they, again, similar to the AWS documentation, just go through the different services. And yeah, I just wanted to echo, as I've written on the chat, it's gone all spammy for some reason on the chat. Sorry about that. But on the chat, I mentioned how I did the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam back in 2019, and then I did the AWS Solutions Architect Associate, and all of those exams really did help me further my career in cloud. And now I work for, funnily enough, a cloud, I think you mentioned it earlier, Richard, a developer environments as a service cloud company, similar to CodeSpaces. So that was interesting that you pointed that out.
Cool.
Awesome. So we have another question here. So for someone crossing into data science for the very first time, where do I start? I enjoy data mining like I already do on Google, but not sure what my best shot is in this career path.
Okay, I'm not a data scientist, but I know Python is a huge data science language. So I think if you're looking to learn a bit of coding, then Python is a good one. If you're thinking about what projects to get involved in, every now and again, I've heard of these pretty amazing crowdsourced kind of projects where people just do data science, do data analysis to come up with, insights that the rest of the industry isn't, that people haven't previously discovered. There are some amazing data sets made available for public use. So with a bit of Googling, you might even be able to find a project which you can apply yourself to, which I think would, look incredible on a CV if you say, oh, I was involved in this project and this is what we did, and I picked up a bit of Python. So something like that, I might give some ideas.
Yeah, I suppose maybe if I were to kind of add again, maybe just coming from the perspective of like Deloitte as a career provider, ironically, the three of us are all actually in the same department. I don't, as far as I'm aware, we don't do a huge amount of work in kind of like data science and data mining as a department. However, I know we do have one of our sectors is called strategy, analytics, and M&A. So it stands SAMA, I think is what it's short, but certainly the analytics part of SAMA, they do quite a lot of data science, data mining, kind of, reviewing data, pulling out trends on behalf of their clients, that type of work. So I think, certainly just coming from a Deloitte perspective on maybe a wide industry perspective, choosing to kind of apply as an analyst within SAMA would be a perfectly good way, I think, or a good foothold into that kind of career path, I would suggest. Admittedly, I don't know that much about SAMA and data science, but I know that is part of the work they do. So that would probably be the route I would point you down.
Yeah, awesome. Hannah, anything else you want to add?
Nope.
All good. Yeah. I just go on. Sorry.
I'd say it's a great area to get into, and I think it's only going to grow for like the next decades, because as we get better at managing our data, we're going to need more and more analysis of that data.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually know a friend who went from being a data engineer to then becoming more of a focused cloud engineer. So it definitely is possible if you started there, you can definitely make the waves to go into more of a dedicated cloud career. We've got another question here. Can or how can the cloud help with the move towards automation in industry? That is a very good question.
Automation. It could mean lots of different things. Can we get more info? But for example, if we're talking about self-driving cars, or my sister lives in Australia, her husband works in these plants in the middle of nowhere, and they have these huge lorries, like bigger than a house, and they're self-driving. They do their own thing. I mean, how does the cloud help with that? It's pivotal, it's core, because the cloud makes available the services that I mentioned before, which are just someone who's as old as I am and remembers life before the cloud. The services that the cloud has were literally like out of the world, unattainable. You would have to employ geniuses in order to just get those systems. Whereas now, with having them available on the cloud, it makes it so much more accessible, that homebrew people. I read about someone who used the Raspberry Pi to sort, I think it was like cucumbers on a farm or something like that, utilizing the cloud. That the Raspberry Pi itself doesn't have the power to do that, but it can take a photo, send it to a cloud service, and then train that service on how to recognize this is a top quality cucumber and this is a lower quality cucumber. So yeah, I mean, leveraging these services available in the cloud really enable the kinds of automation that I just mentioned there. I hope that covers the question. Automation's a big area.
Yeah, it is. Joe, Hannah, anything to add there?
I probably don't on that one. I think I can talk to the next question, but that might be a bit out of my field.
All right, yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to add maybe also in terms of automation, I think, Richard, you mentioned it earlier in your presentation around like infrastructure as code and Terraform. I feel like that was created because we wanted to utilize more of the automation efforts going into the clouds, automating the creation of servers. And you also mentioned developer environments as a service. And I know that Gitpod and I think Codespaces as well have ability where you can automate your cloud dev environments all in the cloud. And I feel like the cloud industry really has sort of inspired that movement towards automation, and also all the cool stuff you mentioned around automation in person as well. It's really cool. Awesome. And then we have another question around, does Deloitte offer opportunities for career changes to join roles in cloud? Joe, do you want to start us off with that one?
I mean, the short answer is yes, absolutely. So I'm kind of assuming by kind of career changes, we're maybe coming from a career that's not particularly consulting related or technology consulting related. And it kind of goes back to my point around certificates. We are, as a company, very good at upskilling and training our individuals. So yeah, absolutely. Kind of, even if you're not coming from maybe like a technology background or a cloud background, we're more than happy to kind of offer roles, particularly entry-level roles, to individuals in cloud or just technology consulting as a whole. And I think maybe for context, if you think about certainly all the graduates that we take from university, for example, and if you take me as a good example into tech consulting, I think there's probably a 50-50 split between those individuals that do a STEM degree and a non-STEM degree. And I didn't know anything about technology, to be honest, and everything I know about it now I've learned from Deloitte. So it's kind of a similar journey of a career change, in that I didn't really know what I was talking about before I joined Deloitte, and I've done a lot of upskill whilst working for Deloitte. So yeah, absolutely. We offer like career changing roles in cloud or any other aspects of tech consulting, to be honest.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, I've worked in cloud for a number of years, but every new project, to a degree, I'm starting from scratch, because a new project has different requirements and will be using services that I've had no experience of. So even when you do have years of experience, it's not necessarily exactly what you're going to need for the next project or the next year. So that feeling of like, wow, this is so huge, this is overwhelming, just get used to that feeling. Don't think it's ever going to go away. That's just the way it is. It's part of the job. Don't be afraid of it. Get right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially cloud changes all the time. I mean, there's AWS reInvent currently right now, which is one of their biggest conferences, and they share so many new services. I used to work with AWS as part of my day-to-day job, and I feel like there was a new service every second I was there. It was very overwhelming, but it is. Yeah, it's part of working in that role. Yeah. Hannah, anything you want to add to that one?
Probably that just if you are interested in cloud and you do see a career for yourself in cloud, now is a good time to get into it, just because it's not only like a small department that deals with cloud projects. It's almost every department nowadays. Most projects, I'd say, or at least most new projects, are based on cloud strategy or cloud migrations or starting from scratch, new projects in the cloud. So yeah, pretty much anywhere you apply to in Deloitte, you will come across cloud in one way or another. So if you're interested, and I assume you are if you're attending this call, then that's really great.
Yeah, incredible. We've got another question here by Bella, who's asked, as a network systems administrator, what cloud role and what exam can I take if I want to venture into the cloud? It's a good question.
I'm doing a systems administrator exam at the moment, or at least I'm studying for it. The systems admin exams are fairly advanced. Like, they're not really like entry level exams for cloud. I'd say they're kind of like the second or third level of difficulty. or at least the AWS one is. So there's one in AWS called SysOps. Richard can probably tell you the equivalent in Azure, but yeah, I would say that's a great place to start. It gets into like very nitty gritty. So if you don't work with that specific cloud provider on a day-to-day basis, it might be quite difficult. But assuming that if you say you are a systems administrator, I'm assuming lots of things will be familiar to you. So yeah, AWS SysOps is a good one to do.
Yeah, that's the side of the cloud that I'm not so close to. I think the Azure one might even be called Network Administrator or something. I'm not entirely sure. But
I think it's as a administrator associate, I think.
yeah, administrator associate. Yeah, that sounds familiar. But absolutely, the skills are entirely transferable and really tie into that like scenario one I was talking about with like data center migrations and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's finding the course, doing a qualification, and transferring the existing skills is the right way to go, and is completely a feasible way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just say, network systems administrator, that sounds like a very, very complicated role, because I know networking is actually one of my biggest weaknesses. I don't really understand it. So I always applaud people who know networking. So yeah, that's really good. Good luck with taking that with that cert, hopefully. So we don't have any more questions. However, I did want to ask, just because it was a question that popped up in my head, was and I'm sure the audience are also thinking it, but which cloud provider is the best one to use? Where should people start? Because it can be quite confusing when you have the big players, AWS, GCP, Azure. Where do people start? Like, do you have, maybe it's a very biased, a very like the biased like question.
Yeah, there's no best. I mean, we work for a consultancy, so obviously we're going to just say it depends. But there's no best. I mean, there are advantages. Certain vendors are better at certain things. So, if an organization has lots of legacy Windows applications and like Microsoft Office and things like that, they're looking to do a data center migration, they might find that Microsoft Azure is a good match for that, especially if their like user accounts are already in an on-premise Active Directory that can easily be migrated. Although AWS saw that as an area that they were losing out on, so now AWS is also good at migrating Microsoft Active Directory to be ran on the cloud in AWS. And then, for example, Google is great for a plugin if it's like analytics and the search engine analytics and advertising, things like that. So it really does depend on the use case, and there's no need to commit to just one. Many organizations choose, in this scenario we're going to use Azure, and in this scenario we're going to use AWS. So yeah, it depends truly is the answer.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And also a lot of companies these days, especially in my first job, we use like multi-cloud. So sometimes it was literally all of them. So some days, so it just felt really overwhelming in that sense. But that's a really good answer. And also don't be overwhelmed by all of them, because I think it really, if once you learn one, you can easily transfer what you learn, because a lot of the services definitely like mix.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, and then we've got another question that I thought someone from the audience might be thinking is around the advice for the interview process at Deloitte. So what does that look like? So if someone right now is listening and they're like, oh, I want to apply to Deloitte now. They seem like, I could work with Richard and Joe and Hannah. What is the sort of process in terms of that?
Should I talk to that one? So it's kind of a multi-stage process. So I think before I maybe get into the process itself, what I would suggest doing as a kind of just a starter for 10 is if you just Google Deloitte and from our web page, you should be able to navigate to the careers section. And on there, we've kind of got the early years career pages. And that will give you a breakdown of essentially all the different types of roles / departments that you can apply for. There is a lot, and I certainly don't think I'll be able to talk to all the things that are on offer, but you'll see that cloud is on offer quite a lot throughout all of those pages. But essentially the application process is similar to probably most big employers, I would have thought, in that via the website you need to complete a kind of online application. So that's kind of all things around education history, contact details, etc., and you submit that. I don't think we ask for CVs anymore, actually, through our online applications. So I don't think you'll need to provide that. And then the other part of that is it's kind of an online assessment where you're provided with a number of situations, and you have to either rank what you would do in terms of the options provided, or choose from a multiple choice answers, kind of the kind of best action to take. So you kind of do those two activities, and then they will get reviewed. If you were successful at that stage, you will then get invited to a assessment center. Okay, and the assessment center's got 3 elements to it. So you have a group exercise, where essentially you'll be in a room, or a virtual room. They're all virtual at the moment, all the interviews, with other potential candidates. You're given essentially a situation, a case study, and a task, and the idea is that you've got to kind of work through it as a team. That is then followed by a spotlight interview, where you're kind of given a topic, you're given some time to prepare, and then you kind of have a conversation about that topic with an interviewer, and then you have a final round interview, and all 3 of these are done on the same day. So it's kind of one assessment center, and that kind of final round interview is what we traditionally might call like competency based. However, certainly if you're following like the graduate intake flow, it's more kind of, we actually ask kind of strength-based questions rather than competency-based questions. So it makes it a little bit easier to answer if you don't have kind of a huge background, or kind of a huge kind of like background of like actual work experience. So like you might be able to draw from experiences outside of work or through university or whatever, college or whatever other kind of backgrounds you may have. And that's essentially it for the day. In terms of advice, getting through that, I mean, one, kind of just be yourself. I mean, kind of hot tips maybe for the group exercises, that's all around kind of collaboration, managing conflict, working with others. The spotlight activity, it's not about actually having knowledge of the scenario or the topic that you've been provided. It's about how you structure your argument, and or like present back a like logical thinking around it. So you don't need to worry about having background knowledge. You'll be provided the knowledge that you need in the case study, and then really it's just about how you interpret that. And then the final round interview, again, the main thing is just try and be try not be nervous. I would say try and be to the point. And then equally, I think it's always sensible to kind of have your own questions ready to ask back. They like to have it as like a 2-way conversation, not just like sit there and listen to someone monologue at them, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my download of what the application process is and kind of my hot tips. Hopefully that's helpful. I don't know if Hannah or Richard, anything
that definitely is, yeah. Hannah, yeah, do you want to add anything to that?
So what's just been described as the normal graduate intake route. Yeah. If you are a career changer, or you particularly like Code First Girls, you can also apply to join Deloitte through the Nano degree. So Deloitte sponsors a number of places with Code First Girls for people to complete Nano degrees when they either are changing their career or finishing up with their studies, or working like full time, and the Nano degrees in the evenings. So how that works is you'll complete you apply via Code First Girls to complete the nano degree, and then after that there will be 2 interviews with Deloitte, an individual one and a group one, very similar to what Joe has just outlined. And then after that, if you are successful, then you'll complete your nano degree for 4 months, and then you'll join Deloitte 4 months later as a full-time employee, as a full-time analyst, I would say. And yeah, that's kind of that pathway. The difference with that is that you will obviously have done 4 months worth of code experience, and you will have a nano degree under your belt. You will be given some form of training once you arrive at Deloitte, but it will be less extensive than the training you would get if you joined via the normal graduate route. So it's a different option for you.
That's awesome that we have that path as well with Code First Girls. So it's really going to open a lot of opportunities. Thank you for that, Hannah. And then we have another question here around what is life like at Deloitte? So what's the culture like? Is it like flexible working, career progressions? How does that all work?
I think all of us can take this one.
Yeah, we might. Yeah, so it's contract or client based. So with each new project, you'll be with a new team, you'll be with a new client. That's keeps things really interesting, and the culture can change as you move between clients and between teams. Absolutely, with especially since coronavirus and things like that, flexible working has come up, and become more important. But yeah, I guess for me it's related to the project you're on, but I think it's very kind of entrepreneurial, and there are lots of opportunities, and as you focus and develop in a certain area, you will become more skilled and you'll become recognized for that, and it really allows you to grow in the direction that you want to grow in, because as a large organization, it really has so many opportunities. You can kind of go in any direction.
Yeah, I suppose on the career progression, so there's huge opportunity of kind of career progression. We obviously have like a innate grade structure, and kind of your movement up that structure will be managed by the department that you land in. So kind of the yearly performance reviews and review cycle is done kind of within departments. And yeah, I think is looking after talent is kind of a massive part of the culture at Deloitte. I think people do care. If you were to join Deloitte, you'd get a people lead who would kind of be the person that represents you at kind of those appraisal processes, and is the person kind of your point of contact to help you kind of move your way through that career progression. And certainly, I joined as a graduate 7 years ago, and I've kind of progressed through to a manager these days. So yeah, I think there's like huge opportunity for career progression, and I've still got plenty of opportunity in front of me, as it were. And then from just like a cultural point of view, Rich is absolutely right. It can change from project to project. We are very much a consultancy firm. I suppose my only point around kind of the internal culture I find, when you're back at base, you might call it. The big takeaway for me, and kind of one of my big benefits for working at Deloitte, is essentially the people. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've not had someone or known who to be able to turn to, regardless of like the situation that's in front of me. So whether it's like an issue with a client or kind of more a pastoral care or mental health type thing, there's always a point of contact that I'm kind of comfortable with, depending on which topic it is, to turn to, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think there's very much kind of a invested in and generally care for their people type culture.
Yeah, I probably want to echo what Joe said there as well, and Richard. I also joined Deloitte as a graduate 4 years ago, and I actually did a Code First Girls course when I was 19 when I was at uni. And that was the first development course I'd ever done, because I studied English literature, so you can imagine, a bit of a shock. And then once I joined Deloitte, I made it clear pretty quickly that I wanted to get as technical as I could. And I wanted to switch from more like business focused roles, like strategy things or delivery, into more, I guess, code-based roles. And I'd say that the main reason why I've stayed at Deloitte all this time is because of the culture of like training and learning and upskilling all the time. I have done a multitude of different roles on so many different projects. And I really feel like I've been able to grow in my career because of all these opportunities that I don't think I would have had at a non-consulting based company, where you have your role and then you have to essentially apply for another one or quit your job and go and find another job, another role. So I guess I am proof that at Deloitte you can go from English literature grad to full-time developer, like I'm hoping some of the people on this call might want to do.
Sorry, I was on mute, but yeah, that's honestly exactly what Code to West Girls is opening up to people. And just thank you for sharing your story, Hannah. I think a lot of people will find that very motivating to then go ahead and apply at Deloitte. But yeah, I don't think we have any more questions. I'll leave you all to enjoy your evenings, but just wanted to say thank you to everyone that has joined our MOOC today. Make sure to give us a follow to stay updated on all the opportunities at Code First Girls. Just remember, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok these days. And I'm also more than happy to chat to anyone about questions that you have. And I'm sure we can pass that on to the Deloitte team as well if you have any more questions. But yeah, thank you, Richard, Joe, Hannah, and to everyone that has joined us today. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.